Ever wondered what the Moustache Man did when he wasn't busy starting world wars or giving impassioned speeches? Well, you're in for a treat. This isn't your typical history lesson, but a deep dive into the peculiarities and oddities of the Nazi Party during the Second World War. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another history lesson, let me assure you, this isn't your typical snooze-fest. We're not just talking about politics and warfare, but their strange religious views, their international relations, and even their bizarre explorations. And remember, in this story, the Moustache Man isn't the hero, but he sure does make for an interesting villain. So, let's get this show on the road and uncover the lesser-known aspects of the not-so-wonderful world of the Nazi Party. Now, you might think that Nazis, with their obsession with racial purity, would have no time for religion, but oh, you'd be wrong. They had a complicated, and let's say, innovative approach to faith. The Nazis were predominantly Protestant, but they weren't content with Christianity as it was. They promoted a version called positive Christianity, which was Christianity minus the Jewish bits, plus a hefty dose of racial purity. It was like Christianity, but with a Nazi twist. But the Nazis didn't stop at Christianity. They had a fascination with paganism and the occult, setting up the Ahnenerbe to dig into the archaeological and cultural history of the Aryan race. The Nazis also had views on other religions. They saw potential allies in Hindus and Muslims, influenced by their racial and political ideologies. But their relationship with the Catholic Church was more contentious, leading to the Reichskonkordat, a treaty that was more about control than faith. Religion for the Nazis was a tool, a means to an end. They indoctrinated the youth through the Hitler Youth Program, using faith as a propaganda tool. The impact of the Nazi Party's religious policies was profound, shaping Germany and the world in ways that are still felt today. Now, if you thought the Nazis were just about marching boots and ominous flags, well, you're in for a surprise. The Nazi Party, under the leadership of the Moustache Man, had a foreign policy that was as aggressive as a hungry wolf. They were determined to overturn the Treaty of Versailles, which they saw as a symbol of Germany's humiliation after World War I. The party's diplomatic strategies were as cunning as a fox, always aiming to strengthen Germany's position on the global stage. Now, let's talk about some unexpected friendships. Ever heard of the Silver Legion in the US? Well, they were like distant cousins of the Nazis, sharing similar ideologies. The Nazis had a knack for finding sympathizers in foreign governments, and the Silver Legion was no exception. But don't think it was all sunshine and rainbows. The Nazis had a complex relationship with the KKK, despite their shared ideologies. Yes, you heard it right. The Nazis and the KKK were not exactly the closest of friends. The Nazi Party's foreign policies played a significant role in the onset of World War II. They were like a spark that ignited a powder keg. The party's aggressive, expansionist policies, combined with their disregard for international treaties, set the stage for the most devastating conflict in human history. Misinformation and manipulation were the tools of the trade for the Nazis. They used these tactics to shape international perceptions and further their political agenda. The Moustache Man was a master of manipulation, using propaganda to create an image of Germany as a victim of international justice. The legacy of the Nazi Party's foreign policies is still felt today. Their aggressive, expansionist policies, disregard for international law, and use of propaganda have left a lasting impact on international relations. The lessons learned from this dark chapter in history continue to shape our world today. Now, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? But remember, history is not just about dates and events. It's about understanding the motivations, strategies, and consequences of those who shaped our world. So let's keep digging into the past, and who knows what we might uncover next. Let's dive into the world of love, Nazi style. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about candlelit dinners and long walks on the beach. No, no, no. We're talking about a love story written by the dictator of the dimple himself. The Nazi Party had a very, well, let's say, unique perspective on marriage and family. They were big fans of eugenics, which is basically a fancy word for let's only let the people we think are the best have kids. So, if you were a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan, congratulations, you just won the genetic lottery. Now, finding a partner wasn't as simple as swiping right on Tinder. Oh no, the Führer's friends had a whole selection process. You couldn't just marry for love. You had to marry for the fatherland, and once you were hitched, the fun didn't stop there. You had to raise your children according to the Nazi playbook, which included a healthy dose of indoctrination with your morning cereal. Women in Nazi society had a very specific role. They were expected to be dutiful wives and mothers, raising the next generation of little Nazis. And let's not forget, they were also expected to produce as many of these little darlings as possible. The Nazis were all about increasing the birth rate and promoting those Aryan traits. These policies had a significant impact on the population. Birth rates did increase and the Aryan ideal was promoted. But these policies were also a tool for control and indoctrination. The Nazis were able to shape society to their liking, and the effects of these policies are still felt today. So there you have it. Love and marriage in the Nazi Party. It's a far cry from the fairy tales, but it's a part of history that we can't ignore. Now, our mustache sporting dictator and his crew weren't just about world domination and racial purity. They were also quite the explorers. Starting with the frosty terrains of Antarctica, the Nazis embarked on a journey known as the New Swabia expedition in 1938 to 1939. The goal? Well, it wasn't just about building snowmen. They were keen on setting up a whaling station, which was a clever guise for their real agenda, securing a base for war and possibly discovering secret passages to the inner Earth. Yes, you heard it right. The Nazis were into hollow Earth theories too. Next stop, the towering peaks of the Himalayas. The SS, under the leadership of Heinrich Himmler, sent an expedition in 1938 to Tibet. The mission was part scientific, part spiritual, and part downright bizarre. They were searching for the origins of the Aryan race, hoping to find ancient texts, and maybe even a Yeti or two. Moving on to the Nordic countries, the Nazis had a particular interest in Norway. They occupied the country during the war, but their fascination went beyond military strategy. They believed that the Nordic people were the purest of the Aryan race and sought to incorporate their culture and symbols into their own twisted ideology. Finally, the Middle East wasn't spared from the Nazis' global escapades. They had a complex relationship with the region, influenced by their racial and political ideologies. They even attempted to form alliances with Arab leaders, hoping to spread their influence further. The Nazis' explorations were a strange mix of science, spirituality, and ideology, all wrapped up in their quest for world domination. It's a chapter of their history that's as fascinating as it is chilling, and it's a stark reminder of how the pursuit of knowledge can be twisted by those with nefarious intentions. From the international relations of the Nazi Party to their peculiar explorations and expeditions, it's been a wild ride through history. We've seen how the Moustache Man and his merry band of misfits manipulated religion, marriage, and even exploration for their own twisted ends. We've seen how their actions have a lasting impact on the world, for better or worse. But let's not forget the most important lesson here. History is not just a series of events, but a complex web of decisions, actions, and consequences. And while we can't change the past, we can learn from it. We can strive to understand the motivations and ideologies that led to such atrocities, so that we may prevent them from happening again. So, as we close this chapter on the Nazi Party, let's remember the words of George Santayana: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it."